Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Timeless Movie Podcast, episode number 137. My name is Victor Vasquez. Appreciate you joining me on this episode and this channel where we talk about movies, new movies that come out in streaming or in theaters. We break them down on this podcast. First half of the podcast, very high level, non-spoiler stuff, just giving you my personal thoughts about the new movie that we got to check out and whether you should watch it in theaters, stream it, or maybe skip it. And then the second half of the podcast, we dive in a little bit deeper, spoil some stuff, pros and cons, favorite moments, and then we close up the podcast by asking a very important question and trying to answer it. Is this movie timeless after one viewing? Can I see myself rewatching this movie various different times in the future? Before we talk about this week's new movie, I did want to highlight that the Timeless Movie Podcast is available on all platforms like Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcast. Give us a follow, listen, subscribe, leave us some reviews as well. Would love to hear your feedback about the podcast and how we can hopefully get better as well. Now, speaking of prior episodes that have come out, episode 136 of the Timeless Movie Podcast is available on all the platforms that I just mentioned. On that specific podcast, I talked about the new film from A24 called Materialists. It stars Dakota Johnson, Chris Evans, Pedro Pascal. It is a stacked cast and a very interesting take on almost like a new and evolved romance movie about love and dating. Definitely listen to that episode if you are interested in that type of a movie. And also in the comments, let me know if you enjoyed the pros and cons and if you agree with some of my thoughts about Materialists. All right, let's go ahead and move on to this week's episode in which we are talking about the new film from Sony, directed by Danny Boyle, and it is called 28 Years Later. That is right, we are back into this franchise, this post-apocalyptic type of franchise that deals with infected people. That's called the Rage virus. Little background, I actually have only seen 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later as of the last 6 months, I want to say. I think I saw 28 Days Later for the first time at the end of 2024, and then I ended up seeing the follow-up 28 Weeks Later this week before the release of this new film. So very fresh on my mind. This franchise has been something very cool. I know that there's probably a very big following and people are really anticipating this film. For me, again, a little bit different. I enjoy these movies. Nothing crazy. I can say that the first two movies of this franchise were not timeless for me. They were enjoyable watches. But what really got me interested in 28 Years Later was the trailer. I got to say that, hands down, probably the best and most intense trailer that I've seen of 2025. And so that's really one of the bigger reasons why I wanted to catch up on this franchise and check out this movie. So that's enough rambling on some of the background thoughts. I got to check this one out on opening night. Let's go ahead now and transition over to the non-spoiler section of the podcast. Okay, after watching 28 Years Later, I got to say that this movie was really damn good. This film, I think, knocks it out of the park in making the audience feel like they are in this post-apocalyptic world. And I think one of the reasons why they succeed in that is because of they just nail the atmosphere. The atmosphere of this film, of you being a part of this quarantined place, this country where you're secluded from the rest of the world, the rest of civilization, and you're just seeing these people that live on an island just trying to survive, trying to just understand, like, hey, here's your role, here's what we've been doing in order to really fend off all of these infected and stay alive. And so that's, I think, one of the biggest things I can give this film as a compliment is just the way that it's able to make you feel that this world is very real. And if you've been a fan of the prior films of 28 Days or 28 Weeks Later, if you're very accustomed to seeing that kind of world and you love that world, I think this one does it so well that it just kind of reminds you of, like, yeah, remember the first time watching these movies and feeling this type of way. And even if this is the first time you're watching and this is your first entry into this franchise, I still think that it does a great job in making you feel like you're being surrounded by this place that is just dangerous all over. Also got to call out that the performances in this film from Jodie Comer, Ray Fiennes, Aaron Taylor Johnson, Alfie Williams, just incredible. It's outstanding how they were able to just what they were given to just make it feel so raw and so visceral in certain types of ways, and just show you the emotion. And I think that's one of the bigger surprises that I had is this movie is very emotional, and that has to do with the characters that you're watching. And emotion is nothing new for the 28 years franchise. I mean, there's been threads of emotion every single movie in 28 Days Later, 28 Weeks. But in this one, I feel like it's just much more prominent in the movie. So those are my high level thoughts. I had a good time. Not a perfect movie. We'll talk a little bit about one of the nitpicks that I had that kind of dragged it down just a little bit. But overall, an enjoyable time in the theaters. Let me give you a little synopsis on what the movie is about. Again, if this is your first time getting into the 28 days, weeks, years franchise, this will be, again, a good idea as to what this movie is about. The film starts you off very similar to prior films in regards to the first day of when this rage virus kicked off. And so you're in Scotland, you're in the specific area, and you get to meet a character named Jimmy. He is a very young kid. He seems to be in a house full of other kids that are trying to ignore what is going on, but eventually everything kind of spills into the room, and Jimmy witnesses some chaotic and horrible atrocities in regards to these infected people killing members of his family. And so you see him witness all this stuff. He runs to his father, who's a priest, and his father kind of gives him the cross necklace that he has, and he tells him to run because Judgment Day has come. And so that's kind of how it just sets you up in this world of there's just so much terror, so much trauma, and then you just see Jimmy just run away. And then eventually you get the little intro letting you know where the world is. I believe Great Britain has been quarantined, but the rest of the world seems to be just running as normal. And then you get placed on a specific island off the coast of Great Britain, and you're basically introduced to the character named Spike. Spike is played by Alfie Williams. He is actually waking up and he's getting ready for his first ever hunt. And so this is almost like a trial or a rite of passage for kids as they get to a certain age in this island to get sent on their first hunt. He's actually going to go with his father, and his father is Aaron Taylor Johnson's Jamie. And so they go on this hunt. He gets to experience his first taste of the mainland of Great Britain. He gets to get a taste of his first kill as after he shoots down with an arrow one of the infected individuals that are on the island. And then he gets to really experience a little bit more about how dangerous everything can be. But as they come back to the island, he ends up having trouble with his dad. They actually have a very big conflict when it comes to Alfie's mother. Alfie's mother is actually called Isla, and she's played by Jodie Comer. She's actually a little bit sick. She's starting to forget a lot of things. And so after this big conflict, Alfie wants to try to save his mom. He wants to find a doctor and try to help her in any way that he can. And so what does he do? He ends up finding a way to get Isla and himself off of the island and go to the mainland and find a doctor. But as you would expect, there are some horrible things on the mainland that he's going to have to encounter and things that might get in his way in order to try to help his mom. So that's just a little bit of a setup as to what this movie is about. Again, overall, it is a gripping story. This, from beginning to end, really, this story is just going to get you to just focus in on the emotional things that are happening, what the characters are going through, and it's just showing you so many different things, and really good things as well. New elements that they added to expand the franchise in a different way as well. But again, overall, I really enjoyed what this film had to offer. My personal recommendation is, even if you actually haven't seen the 28 Days Later movie, 28 Weeks Later, I would still actually recommend this movie and have you guys check it out in theaters. I will caveat it with that if you are not good with gore, if you're not good with very grotesque death scenes and things of that nature, maybe wait for this on streaming. Maybe kind of keep an eye out for it. Maybe wait till other friends watch it and give you a little bit more of a heads up. But there is some gnarly deaths and there is some intense scenes that show very grotesque stuff. So if you're not okay with that, if you're not okay with blood and things of that nature, I would say just hold off. If you're already a fan of the 28 Days, 28 Weeks franchise, this is a definite recommend. You guys have got to check this movie out. All right, that's all the non-spoiler, high-level thoughts that I had about 28 Years Later. Now let's go ahead and move over to some spoiler stuff. I won't spoil too much, but I just want to give you a little bit of the ideas as to what I liked and didn't like about this movie. So, if you have not seen the movie, please jump out of the video now and then watch the movie and then come back and in the comments, let me know if you agree or disagree with any of my thoughts that I'm going to bring up. All right, let's go ahead and jump into pro number one for 28 years later. Please bear with me. This is going to be a very weird pro, but I want to start here. One of my first enjoyments of this film that really stuck with me was the subversion of the character of Jimmy. Now, again, this might be a very weird thing. This might be only something that I experienced myself because I asked my fiance, I asked my brother. Neither one of them actually felt the same way that I did. But again, in the comments, if you've seen the movie, let me know if you agree with me. But I really enjoyed the subversion of the Jimmy character. So I mentioned it in the plot synopsis that the first character that you actually meet is a kid named Jimmy. And again, he witnesses some horrific things, seeing his family get torn apart by these infected individuals, and he has to run away. And so as the movie goes on, you get to meet these different characters. And in my brain, I immediately start thinking, okay, which one's Jimmy? Who's Jimmy? And at first I thought it was Aaron Taylor Johnson's character, the father of Spike. I thought, okay, like, is it Jimmy? Like, and I should have known right from the get-go that it wasn't him because, I mean, Jimmy had blonde hair and Jamie did not. And so that should have been my first sign, but that didn't stop my brain from thinking, okay, it's gotta be Aaron Taylor Johnson's character. As the story goes on, it is not him, but in their little adventure that Spike and Jamie have on their, first hunt, they witness a individual, an infected person that has the word Jimmy inscribed on their body. And I immediately started thinking, okay, who is this going to be if it's not Jamie? And then I immediately thought, okay, it's got to be Dr. Kelson. So they mentioned this character named Dr. Kelson, who was played by Ray Fiennes, who he was a very troubled individual. He was somebody that would burn bodies, and he just seemed like he was out of his mind. And so immediately my brain, okay, that's got to be Jimmy. He's just lost his way after seeing his entire family get torn apart. It's got to be him. And then eventually we get to meet Dr. Kelson, and we realize that it is not Jimmy. He actually, even though he looks from an outside perspective looking in, like a very strange and psychotic character, he's actually very well-mannered. He's very caring, and he actually has a very interesting type of way of thinking, considering that he's been by himself for so many years. He has this way of thinking that like we have to remember the dead and really cherish them and remember their memories and really have a place for them in a type of graveyard that he set up. So really interesting stuff. And then we finally get to meet Jimmy. And it was actually not until the last 5 minutes of the movie where we get to meet the character of Jimmy, all grown up. He's actually the leader of this type of group or cult that wears tracksuits. And you know it's Jimmy because not only does he introduce himself, but he actually has the same cross chain that was given to him by his priest father. And so very interesting. I was not expecting to meet Jimmy until the end of the movie, but it seems to be setting up some type of a second part to the 28 years later film. But that whole subversion of me trying to figure out who is this Jimmy character? What is this going to be his role in this movie? What's his relevance? And you don't find that out until the end. But again, that whole subversion part of it was just a fun little exercise that my brain did. Again, I might be in a very small minority that actually does that when you're watching a movie. I enjoy trying to figure things out, but again, that just might be me. All right, let's move on to the second pro, which I think might be a little bit more of a real pro, which is the expansion of the lore of this franchise. One of my favorite things that I enjoy of franchises is how can you expand the characters, the understanding, the history of what you're trying to show the audience. Sometimes movies fail at this. Sometimes movies try to copy what the first film did, what the second film did, and don't explore or expand anything. Here, though, Danny Boyle, Alex Garland, they both understand this franchise and they've expanded it in a way where, okay, now that 28 years have passed, what's been different? One of the bigger things that they expanded was the infected aren't the same. they also have evolved. They have transformed. They actually now have different groups being managed by these alphas. And so the alphas are these bigger monstrosities, these bigger infected that are a little bit smarter. They run a little bit faster and they are just way more ferocious and scary too. And so I really love that they expanded that aspect of the infected. They're not just mindless people wandering looking to kill things. No, they are now being controlled by these different alphas, and they also reproduce, which is one of the crazier things that they now are able to have babies as well. So very crazy aspect to this movie that you actually get to see the birth of a uninfected child from an infected woman. And so again, that kind of a idea and concept is what I'm really looking for when you have these franchises that have been going on for many years. Other things that they've also tried to expand in regards to the lore of the 28 Days, Weeks, and Years franchise is what is civilization doing outside of this location? So my thought initially was, okay, the entire world is infected, but you actually end up finding out that no, the infected is actually only happening in this small section of Europe, in Great Britain, but everything else, like in parts of France and Sweden and other areas, civilization is back to normal. People have phones, people have normal jobs, and so it's very interesting how they kind of touched upon that. I'm hoping that we see more of it in the follow-up to this movie because yes, there is a second part to 28 years later that might be coming out in 2026. I might have that wrong, but it almost felt like it was a part one and there's more story to tell. So again, I really liked that aspect and I really wanted to call that out that the best parts of the follow-ups and sequels to franchises is showing more of this world. Don't just show us the same pieces that we've seen already. I want to see new stuff as an audience member, and I thought they delivered in this movie. Third pro, and this was kind of a combo one that I included two different aspects to, but I think they both kind of add so much to the story. First one that I want to call out is the camera angles that they pulled off in this movie based on the action. I really enjoyed how unique and different it was from the prior movies. And what I mean by that is in this film, whenever there was an action sequence where either Spike or Jamie would use a bow and arrow and they would shoot and kill some of the infected, as soon as one of the infected got hit with an arrow, the camera would kind of freeze and then move to a different angle and show you the blood splattering or show you them getting just knocked off of their feet and getting knocked down and getting killed. And I really love that because I actually saw some behind the scene footage of how Danny Boyle and Alex Garland and the team on the cinematography front were able to use these innovative rigs that use iPhones. And so they would use the iPhones to shoot multiple different angles. And so if you Google and search up 28 years later iPhone, I'm pretty sure you'll see these images of how they set up these cool rigs. And it gave me these action sequences, these different angles that would cut and be spliced together. It reminded me of like a video game almost, like a video game that involved like zombies, you killing things, and it just switching up the angle as you got a headshot on a specific character. So really interesting stuff. I really liked how they tried to expand and make the angles and the action very different from prior entries. And then I also got to add on to what made my enjoyment of this movie so, I guess, elevated from the other prior movies was the sound design. I mean, it's incredible how just little things here and there when there's no score, but you have the characters walking through a forest. You have them walking through an empty train. You have them trying to hide from the alpha. Everything sounds so crisp, so clear. And there's, again, moments where the tension is just elevated in these scenes. So, wanted to call that out. Just both of these two elements, the cinematography and the action sequences, as well as the sound design, as two big elements of what made me appreciate this movie and made me really invest in the world of what I was watching. Okay, those are all the pros that I wanted to call out. I'm pretty sure I'm forgetting some, but let's go ahead and move on to some of the cons that I had. There was one nitpick that I just kept thinking about after I watched the movie, and it's unfortunate. Again, it didn't really ruin my experience, but it did alter the way that I kind of thought about, like, well, what was the purpose of this? So let me stop rambling and jump into it. The one nitpick that I had was I felt like there was a couple of items and elements of this movie that were just kind of very odd and how they included it, very juxtaposed to what was going on. One of the elements was the actual music and actual song drops that they would do in this film. I get that they were trying to kind of put you in a place where, hey, you're hearing this song that is very, very mild, very, very calmly paced, but there's actually these horrible things that you're seeing visibly with these infected people. And so I get the idea of trying to do that, but sometimes the song just didn't really vibe with what was going on with that actual scene. And so it kind of took me out of those scenes a couple of times. Again, I'm not going to say that it happened throughout the entire movie, but there were moments where, again, to me, I get the idea behind it, but it just didn't work for me. Another thing that just didn't work was the introduction of Jimmy and his cult or his group. They were all wearing tracksuits. They were all just talking in a specific type of a way that, again, it felt like it was very juxtaposed to what we were witnessing throughout the story of Spike and his family. And I don't know, it just they just felt like they were part of a different movie. I get told my fiance and my brother, it felt like they were part of like a movie like Kill Bill. They were a different gang that, and the way that they killed a couple of these different types of infected, they were doing flips, they were doing all this stuff. It just felt very odd and jarring. And it didn't really fit with the first hour and 50 minutes of what I had just seen. So again, I maybe that was the purpose of it. Maybe they wanted you to show that, hey, the rest of the mainland is going to be very different to what Spike and his family have gone through. And if that's the whole reason of it, totally fine. But to me, I just did not connect with that part. And it actually, again, it ended with a very interesting way. My whole experience, it was just not an ending that I was expecting. And I don't know, it just felt off for me, if that makes sense. But let me know in the comments, guys. Do you agree or disagree with that kind of an opinion? Maybe for me, I'm way off, and I know I'm probably going to be in the minority on that perspective of just feeling that these certain elements just did not fit the story so well. All right, that is all the pros and cons that I have. Let's give away some awards, though, for 28 years later. Let's start off with MVP. This is, I gotta say, probably one of the harder ones to decide. I know I'm always saying that, but I'm being completely honest here. You have Aaron Taylor Johnson as Jamie, who performs the heck out of his role as a father who is troubled with not being able to help his wife in Isla. You have Isla putting on a great performance as somebody that is almost like they have dementia, that they're forgetting things. And then you have Alfie Williams playing Spike. He is the central protagonist of this story. He is a kid that is coming of age and having to become an adult in front of our eyes. So many great things. Can't forget Ray Fiennes. I mean, he completely subverts your expectations on who his character is going to be. He actually has a lot of wise and knowledgeable things to say. But if I had to choose one character, I'm going to go with Jodie Comer as Isla. I mean, the way that she plays this character of, again, somebody that has to play very confused, being stuck in a specific spot where she's remembering things of the past before the rage virus, and then remembering that, oh no, I'm talking to my son Spike. And she has these moments where, again, she doesn't know where she is, what to do, yet there's also this motherly aspect that steps in order to save Spike when an infected comes to try to eat him. So there's so many moments, and then even more heartbreaking is Jodie Comer has to actually be the one to tell Spike in this one moment that she has cancer. And because of this, she knows that she doesn't have long to live. And she has to actually be the one to kind of tell Spike that this emotional moment, this emotional scene of, hey, even though this is hard, just know that I loved you so much. I loved every moment of being with you, and all this different type of dialogue that I'm pretty sure I'm butchering, but it was just brutal how they had to go through that scene again, which I think it's very easy to say that this is probably one of the more emotional movies of the 28 years franchise. So incredible stuff, but it's not emotional because of what was said. It's emotional because of what the characters were delivering. And number one on my list, MVP, is Jodie Comer. She is just incredible in everything that I see her in, and I cannot wait to see what she does after this. All right, now let's go ahead and move on to the next award, which I will be giving to the best moment of the movie. There are so many stuff that I can call out here, right? I just called out an emotional moment between Isla and Spike. There are some intense moments with the infected. But if I had to choose one, I'm going to choose this moment where you have Spike and his father, Jamie, running from an alpha. This moment was crazy. They get to a point where it's in the middle of the night. I think the sun hasn't come up yet. They are trying to get back to the camp that they are from, and they think they're in the clear. there's a little kind of like aisleway that if there's a low tide, there's actually a path that they can walk from the mainland to their island, and they're just running through the water. It's low enough that they're able to kind of run through. And then all of a sudden in the background, you see the alpha running like crazy. It is such a scary moment. My heart was beating because, again, they're the main characters. You know that nothing might happen to them, but you just never know in these types of films when they deal with post-apocalyptic things. Nobody is safe. And so you have a moment where Spike ends up falling to the water, and then you have Jamie just pulling him up, and you can hear in his voice he is freaking out and he's calling for help, and they're so close to the gate, and you eventually get some of the folks that are from their camp shooting arrows, trying to knock down the alpha and stop them from harming Spike and Jamie. So really intense stuff. That one scene of them making it back to camp was probably one of the most intense moments and the most anxiety-filled moments of this movie. There are so many, though. I'm pretty sure I'm forgetting some. So if you have one of your favorite moments of 28 years later, put that down below in the comments as well. All right. And then last but not least, my final award is going to be for my favorite shot or frame of the movie. What is that one shot that just really made me feel like this is like so cinematic and could even be a poster? Mine's going to be super simple. Again, I really loved the expansion of the lore and the introduction of the alphas of the infected. So my one favorite shot is this one scene where you have Spike and Jamie looking out at the horizon, and you just see a big tall tree, and you see the silhouette of a huge alpha just waiting, breathing, and just trying to understand what his next move is going to be. That one shot was just really cool and awesome. So that's going to be my favorite shot of 28 years later. All right, everybody, those are all of my full thoughts about 28 years later. Now comes the time to answer the important question of this podcast, why we are here. Is 28 years later timeless? Is it a movie that I can see myself rewatching in the future, or having like that an energy to, yeah, I want to put this on and watch it because I want to feel this feeling again? I will say that even though this was such a great experience in the theater, I had such a great time, there were so many awesome moments and great performances, I will say that 28 years later is not a timeless movie for me. Very similar to the other movies, 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later. There's a lot of great moments, great scenes, things that really kind of stick with you. But other than those kind of moments, this movie just didn't really leave an impression on me to like, yes, I want to watch this over and over again. I don't know, something about it. And I'm really a fan of post-apocalyptic worlds, but I don't know. Something about this movie was like, yeah, it was such a fun time. I love watching it in theaters, but I already know that I don't think I would get the same experience watching it a second time at my house. Like, I don't know. Something maybe about the theater experience just elevated it so much that I just know that I won't capture that same type of atmosphere, the same type of anxiety. So to me, in my personal opinion, I enjoyed it. I would recommend it to friends and family, but it is not going to be a timeless movie for me, and it does not enter my collection. But what about you guys? What do you think about 28 years later? Am I way off on my nitpick? Am I way off on my decision about it being timeless? Let me know down below in the comments. I would love to talk to you guys and interact with you about your thoughts on this new movie. All right, everybody. Appreciate all those that stayed all the way through to listen to my full thoughts about 28 years later. My name is Victor Vasquez. This has been episode number 137 of the Timeless Movie Podcast. Make sure to check out next week's episode as we cover a new movie and we decide, after one viewing, is it timeless? All right, guys. Appreciate you all. Have a great rest of your week, and I'll talk to you later.